Alright guys, I'm back for the first time in like forever and a half, so that's good. And today, I'm gonna do a video just to let you guys know that I did not in fact die, and I'm gonna be making some videos again. And I'm gonna be talking very lightly because there are people asleep less than 10 yards away, so yeah. In light of Fallout 4 ending and being a very poorly critically received game, well, I'm going to do a video looking on to Fallout 5 and probably going to piss some people off because it's not coming out for a couple of years now, but I'm going to do it anyway because you can only get a little bit lower than 19. Don't forget to subscribe. So I'm going to make my own personal video of the 5 locations that I think are most likely to be Fallout 5's location. Going from least likely to most likely. People do these videos often. So let's just dive right in, because I'm not doing this forever. It's going to be a shorter video. So my first locations are the big Texas cities. Texas is an area that they have touched upon, but they're not really doing much with it. So I think there's a lot that they could do there. You have the Legion in the 4 states Commonwealth, and obviously they'd want to be pushing west because that's just the natural tendency. You have the Brotherhood of Steel around here, at least in some semi-canon things, so you could easily have a fight going on between the two. That's just something I can see. I doubt San Antonio is really the smallest of the 4, so I'm thinking Dallas or Houston. Personally, I think they would stick to Houston because Fallout has a thing for coastlines. San Francisco, Los Angeles, Massachusetts, Boston, DC. They like water. And Dallas is pretty decently inland, just about 100 miles. So Houston really is my first choice. I think you could do some cool stuff with Galveston. It's a beach city town, and I think you can make a cool swamp out of it. There's a lot of stuff you could do there. Houston is a dense city. It's one of the biggest cities in the United States, but there is things that would allow for Bethesda's much-loved rubber banding system. So there's a lot of open area around here, much like the Fallout 4 where you start up here and you work your way down to Boston. You could definitely do something like that with Houston. Although you're dealing with a bigger volume city than Boston, it's much more spread out than Boston is. Number 2, I have Seattle. Now, personally, I'd love to play a game in Seattle. If we were doing my favorites, or the ones where I want to see it most, Seattle would be number 1. I just don't think that they would do it at this point. So, for one thing, it passes the Bethesda water test. It is a coastal city. The main reason I think they wouldn't be able to do it, at least not yet, is because there's a lot of city to cover. It's just very spread out, because Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia. When one ends, see, it starts thing out, the next one begins. When one thins out, the next one begins. I'm not saying that Tacoma or Olympia are huge cities, but they are something that you would need to factor in. And I think it'd be hard to just make the map border right here and leave out Olympia, or make the map border right here and leave out Tacoma. There's just too much there. On the bright side, I think there's an easy eastern and easy western border of the map in just forest and forest. You could just throw a border down, no one would complain. To the north, you literally have the United States border that you could use as a border. Although they wouldn't go that far north, because look, you're still looking at 10 miles. That's probably 150 miles we're looking at, which they would never do. Fallout 4 is more like 40. So you'd be looking at more like this. And like I said, you would wind up leaving out Olympia, which maybe they'd be okay with, I don't know. But if you include Olympia, then you start leaving out some of Seattle. The reason I think this is such a good place to put it is because you have the Brotherhood of Steel coming out of the north. At least people hypothesize the Brotherhood of Steel coming out of the north. You have the NCR down south coming up, and you have what's left of the enclave in the middle of the ocean coming east. So you could very easily have 3 major factions fighting over Seattle. My next one is New York. It's another place I'd like to see Fallout, and I know a lot of people would like to see it. So really quick, I'm going to type in New York so you can see the border for people who aren't familiar with New York's borders. So you have the 5 boroughs. You have the Bronx up here on the other side of the Harlem River. You have, which is what everyone thinks New York City is. It's the nice stuff. Staten Island, which is almost like, not suburbs, but it's houses, like thin townhouses. Not nice townhouses, but townhouses. Then you have Kings and Queens County, or Queens and Kings County, which is Brooklyn and Queens. Which Brooklyn's a little bit more upscale. It's not Manhattan, but it's got skyscraper. Queens, which is moving towards more residential, like Staten Island, but not quite. And the Bronx is almost the most residential out of all of them. So of the 5 boroughs, only 2 of them are really like real city. I think it'd be hard to do. I mean, it's the biggest city in the United States, other than LA, kind of. And that's why I think it'd be hard to do. And the biggest problem with New York is it never ends. I mean, suburb, all the way out to the end. Suburb all the way up north, suburb all the way out west. There's nowhere. It's just so much that you have to put in a game. I mean, there's 20 million people living on my screen right now. There's just too much stuff you need to put in the game. If they were to do it, personally, they wouldn't mess with New Jersey. 1, because New Jersey's a shithole, my home state. 2, you can't create this much suburban sprawl destroyed. You can't. So the only way I think they would do it is make it a non-square map, include the majority of Long Island and the city on the western edge of the map, and do their rubber banding starting out in the Hamptons and working your way towards the city. And maybe including, I don't know, Bayonne, Jersey City, but nothing crazy. You don't even think about including Newark. It would be insane. And I think it would rubber banding even more because you have rivers splitting a lot of the boroughs. So Kings and Queens would be the first one you come to. And then you would need to cross, what is this, I believe? No, Verrazano. You'd cross Verrazano, Staten Island. And you could make that some boss battle to get in there. Or you'd need to make like the minimum caps like they had in New Vegas. And then obviously as a bunch of crossings, Queensboro is one of them. Embarrassingly enough, I think it's this one. Alright, I'm just going to give up. This is an embarrassment. So eventually you'd get into Manhattan, which would obviously be one of the harder ones, and the Bronx, which would be one of the harder ones. This would be good for rubber banding, even though it would be a lot to develop. But we're giving them enough time. 5 years, come on, people. So that's why New York is my number 3. Sorry, that's probably pissing people off. Number 2 now is San Francisco and Oakland. The reason I think this would be a good one is because anyone who knows the older Fallouts, the NCR is all of California minus San Francisco. That's controlled by the Chinese submarine crew and the Shi, who live in, shockingly enough, Chinatown. It's where the hell is it? It's more or less right here in San Francisco. I don't know exactly where, but that's where it is. And cool. So you would have San Francisco, and you could create rubber banding again with bridges. You have the bridge here, the bridge here, the bridge here. This is obviously the Golden Gate. This is the the San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge. And I think that would make for some good rubber banding. The only problem here is, and you have some good lore. You could have factions of the NCR and the Shi going against each other, and you could even throw the Brotherhood of Steel in there if you really feel like it. You can always throw them in. That's the logic. The only problem here is you need to create San Francisco and Oakland. You really can't do one without making the other, because if you did San Francisco, there'd be no land. If you did Oakland, there'd be no San Francisco. They'd be like, come on, you're going to pretend that's the ocean? We know San Francisco's there. So if you're going to do some of it, you got to do all of it. The good rubber banding would be to start up here in the suburbs, the rich suburbs, and you can work your way either across into Richmond or you can work your way down into San Fran. There's a lot you can do, and you could also do the fun stuff with Alcatraz, but we'll leave that alone. So that's why I think San Francisco is a viable option. And of course, I'm going to end it the most predictable way possible with all the leaks and rumors going around. New Orleans is most likely. I'm not going to pretend that I'm happy about it. It's definitely cool that it's somewhere they've never touched. I just don't see how I can get a Fallout feel from New Orleans. But hey, I'm sure they'll do a fine job with it. New Orleans is cool because other than Baton Rouge, there's not a whole lot around New Orleans. I mean, you got the suburbs, you got it hugging Lake Pontchartrain. But down here, it's nothing. It's swamp. So I don't know. They might have the opposite problem that they would have with New York City. I mean, you've got this, but it's just nothing all down here. And a lot of it would be underwater if they stick to their rising sea levels, which they do very selectively, might I add. Like in Boston, they did the sea level, got rid of all these islands, but somehow remained Spectacle Island remains the same. And this, which, if you'll remember, Fort Independence has this huge lake around it that you can drive around, is actually has a causeway, so man-made land holding it together. So the sea levels shrank there, but it rose here to cover all these islands. So they're very selective with where the sea level rises and where it doesn't. But on another note, I think they would have the opposite problem. It would be I mean, I know they love their square maps, which I hate. There's no reason you have to stick to a square map. You could, but I think this could be it, or this would be it. You'd start over here and you'd work your way over along the Mississippi River. That's it, guys. I mean, the reasons for these two, again, I think are great ideas is because of the possibility of another Alaska DLC and the possibility of a Yosemite DLC for San Francisco. Because you always have to think about the DLCs. In New Orleans, you could send them anywhere in the Gulf, which I think is pretty cool. Even to, like, Cancun. It'd be cool to go to Mexico, but you could also do that in Houston. Alright, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, dislike, all that good shit. I'll see you later. Bye and bye.